Thank you. Good morning, members. I call this Ways and Means budget hearing to order. I'm person to the OGA. The agenda has been sent out to everyone with the media. We do have a quorum today. Before we start, I'd like to recognize some of the members. We have Rep. Beneventi, Rep. Camacho, Rep. Flores, Rep. Yangtamay, Vice Speaker Camacho, Rep. Camacho Vicente, and Rep. John Paul. Also, we have TG, our financial analyst, along with Claire, our LA for today, and Mr. Tyrone, our counsel. And thank you, Commissioner, and for bringing your team. Good morning to Ms. Kay and Ms. Esther. Good morning. Good morning, Commissioner. And before we start, we also have Ms. Jasmine from OMB to represent Ms. Vicky, should there be any questions with regards to the budget. And with that, Commissioner, for your opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Tiro and Afari. On behalf of the men and women of the Department of Public Safety, we appreciate this invitation to talk about our budget for fiscal year 24. We meet today is our Director of Administration, Ms. Kay Innes, and our HR Manager, Ms. Esther Reyes. So regarding our FY24 budget that's before you, I'd like to preface that with what we've done this year. We have controlled overtime at the Department of Public Safety. We have implemented controls to ensure that, one, that the safety and security of the community is maintained, while also ensuring that follow-up cases and investigations are continued, because we owe every victim of crimes the closure or some form of closure in that regard. In terms of overtime, as you may be aware, we have had a history of excessive overtime in the Department of Public Safety. And was it easy to implement such controls this year? No, absolutely not. It's not easy in terms that we are at bare minimums at the department. Running 4 shifts is just bare minimum of covering the Commonwealth. That's 4 shifts of 8 hours a day. So that covers the entire week. So I'd like to present that to the committee. As you may see in our FY24 request, our priorities are clearly the pay for our personnel. And along with that pay will be, you'll see that the expense are for communication, utilities, and fuel. Those are big ticket items for the department. But what you do not see there is any form of pay increase for our personnel, no specific increase in training dollars, and also no investment in our information systems and communication systems. We are in the 21st century, and one of the goals of the department is to ensure we have 21st century policing. And how do we do that? By leveraging technology. We're technologically disadvantaged as a department, and we should not just relish or recount the history of the department. We must move forward, and in order to move forward, we need to invest in these technologies. Technologies where you will see, for most of us that have been in the States, right? You run a traffic, you make a right turn on a red. There's a camera taking multiple pictures, and you get a ticket in your mail, right? Technologies that would actually help investigators from key strategic areas on the island, so that to ensure that vehicles or people that are running away from crime, typically the violators, are recorded. So technology is also connects us to the federal government, specifically federal law enforcement, and other jurisdictions in the Pacific. So these are the investments that we need to start now. We cannot just wait till later, but we are very mindful, though, of the financial situation of the Commonwealth. And that is why what we have submitted for FY24 is just that, just enough to keep us afloat. As I am looking forward to every question or concerns and comments from the committee members, including you, Mr. Chair. And we hope to, achieve something as a group and as a team, because we cannot do it alone as a department. We're seeking every opportunity with the federal law enforcement as well as other local law enforcement agencies. And with the help of this committee, I'm sure we'll be able to realize some of those small wins for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else would like to comment? Council Kenny? There is a jumbo. Can I see that? I don't. Apologize. I don't remember being there. Thank you. Thank you, members, and I apologize. I didn't have the agenda with me beforehand. But before we move on, so we can make this official, can we motion to adopt today's agenda? As to adopt today's agenda has been seconded. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Agenda has been adopted. Rep. Sablan.
Thank you, Chairman. And with that motion, if there's no objection, that because our commissioner has made his statement already, that we take that in accord with that adoption of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Sablan. And then we'll move on. Let me see if there's anyone in the public that would like to make comment today. Being there's none, I would now go to the question, and the chair is open to the members asking questions. Rep. Camacho. Your Rep. Camacho. There's Vice Speaker Camacho there.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, everybody. You made a comment about, I guess one of the issues DPS had, and yeah, we gotta kind of come back a little bit to the history before we figure out the solution. But so there was an excessive overtime issue from previous commissioner. So, but what was the cost of actually the excessive overtime? And if you may, can you tell us how we're gonna turn this around? And they're still gonna require overtime, correct, for some of the officers. How can we prevent overtime and give everybody a fair chance to go home and be with family after an 8-hour day? Otherwise, so we'll move on forward. Yeah. Thank you.
So one of the key factors as a former police officer also, and returning back to the department with overtime, is as the department grew, the amount of overtime that each officer earns, you gotta multiply that, overtime meaning anything beyond the 86 hours now for frontliners. So, but for the department, it's all the other activities that the department was doing. We have to relook at what is the Department of Public Safety's key mission and responsibilities, because as you know, as we extend ourselves, right, you're going to incur overtime because there's a finite number of personnel. and you come up with these different activities, you're gonna start right going thin. And when you start going thin, you do not have enough people to run a 24/7 schedule. So that is basically how I see how overtime was became excessive, because and then you do not control that because one, you're not aware of what operations is happening, and two, clearly have seeing a big picture of what's happening within the department. And I agree with you. There will be overtime, but we're not looking at 40, 60, 80, 100 plus hours of overtime. You know, that's unimaginable for an officer, or even for any individual in the government, or even the private sector. So basically, that's how you will start exceeding overtime, is when you start thinning out, and there's multiple activities that is, again, you ask yourself as a department, is that our part of primary mission? And if not, then those are low-hanging fruit, right, that you just put aside because you can address it later. But more importantly, how about leveraging the other law enforcement agencies that may be able to join you, so you can have more personnel on, for instance, a task force, so that you can rotate and manage the hours. So it's a management issue at best.
Got you one more quick question. You also spoke about technology. Um, I was stationed in Germany for 4 years, and you don't see police officers driving up and down the highways or anything. They have this camera that captures everything, and they send you your ticket by mail. And I believe that's one of the best things we can do here. I mean, it's a small island. No, it can happen. So I like that suggestion, and I hope we can move forward with that, and we'll help you out.
You know, Congressman, even in Korea, I was stationed over 20 years ago in Korea, and I don't see police officers on the road too, until you hit the next checkpoint where you actually pay for your toll, and you cannot deny that you did not violate something back there, because one, they're tagging you with your speed tag, and also whether you're supposed to be taking the wrong exit and turning around, because in Korea it's just one way. Good luck on the next exit for you to turn around the other way. Well, you have to go through the toll station, and at the toll station you cannot. I mean, you can't deny it because they have it on footage on what you just committed. So thank you for, yeah, it's similar to what Germany and most other European Union countries have been doing for many years.
All right, they've adopted that because I believe all their highways are connected. Yeah, I was also in Korea for a long while. Thank you. Thank you for the answers. Thank you, Chair. Are you?
Thank you, Rep. Camachos. And just before we move on to Rep. Sablan, I would like to recognize for the record the presence of Representative Olgo, Representative Manglonia, TJ, and Representative Flores. Thank you. Uh, I'll hand the floor now to Rep. Sablan.
Thank you, Mr. And good morning again, Commissioner Bermudez and your team. Uh, on your statement, you said that for the entire week you have 4 shifts to deal with the week. Can I ask how many personnel per shift?
Yes, so we run about 15 per shift. 15, that includes the dispatcher, because we have dispatchers, right? An emergency medical dispatcher and a regular dispatcher. So that leaves 13, if you can do that. And then one shift supervisor, a lieutenant, and one field sergeant that supervises the field. And the remaining will be what's covered for the entire Saipan, island of Saipan. So, yes.
Is that sufficient enough with a 15 personnel per shift, including the dispatchers and the shift supervisors?
Is it sufficient? No. I mean, sufficient in terms of just clearly handling the patrol part, because I'm not counting traffic, which is about 2 to 3 per day. Those are the people enforcing traffic laws and answering accidents or crashes that are happening in the Commonwealth. But the remaining there really is covering sectors across the 8 sectors across the island. And so that is the goal for every shift. But we're not counting also the annual leave and sick leave that people may, or compassionate leave that any officer may be taking.
So how many personnel per shift were you feel comfortable take care of the island of Saipan in a one shift operation?
I will venture to say that actually 25 to 30 would be a sufficient shift for the island of Saipan. Because if we start, as the economy starts growing again, the busy traffic of tourists, that's something that we're not so busy right now. It's sufficient for the patrol officers to do that. But then you take into account other duties on a shift, Congressman, and that includes the 24 hours at the governor's residence, the daily Monday to Friday posting at the governor's office, right? If there's anybody committed at the hospital, we cover that down too for security, and then you minus, you right, take away annual leave because, right, just because I'm not in the business of denying people leave because we failed to have the sufficient number. They earn that leave, they gotta take that leave, and then the sick leave. So 25 actually to minimum will be sufficient to cover on an 8-hour shift.
Thank you for your response, Commissioner. How many personnel are in your investigation division or unit?
We have about 35 right now.
Is that sufficient or is that too much for a unit?
No, sir, it's not sufficient also. It's, again, we're running on bare minimum. We have cold cases. We have over 20 unsolved homicides in the Commonwealth. 20. And this goes back to the 70s.
So what would be a comfortable number of personnel investigation to tackle the mission here in
The
the
mission,
Commonwealth?
yes. For CID, 40 to 50 actually would be the perfect because as you see nowadays, there's an increase in property theft, as you may all know. And we don't fluctuate. We're there to address and meet the current crime rate. But with this increase, we need to be able to shift resources within CID because you cannot just pull somebody from patrol or traffic and say you're a detective today. There's a time for them to be to be trained up to be a detective. And when I say CID, our investigation, that includes our crime scene investigators too. So, and the training, again, if you have new people.
Thank you for your response, and I'm glad that you brought up the issue about theft, increase of theft. We see it all over social media, the continuity of perpetrators, stealing in the, for instance, an example, the village of Kangman. What are your plans to mitigate and tackle this issue or this crisis right now?
Thank you, Congressman. The ideal approach to that will be, as part of the sector, is dedicate a group, 2 to 3 officers for instance, the village of Kangmang, for the size of Kangmang, right? And actually revive the police koban that we have there. So it's, the koban is the Japanese concept of a police substation. So actually revive that and maintain that patrol in Kangmang specifically. And then when we go to Cobreville, will be a similar approach. To Dandan, a similar one. And then to the north, right? And then we have Central. So really is to dedicate officers specifically for that zone so that they know the community, right? They have community town halls so that they can get together. So as I continue to reassess and shift resources within the department, that is, I'm trying to figure out, right, when is the right time to actually start dedicating officers with what we have. I'm very mindful though, but that as I start dedicating officers, then that would take away from the regular patrol, and then here we are again with excessive overtime, right? Overtime is going to grow if I do that. So it's either one crisis, a financial crisis, or right the crime crisis that we have to address. But my job is to focus on the crime crisis that we may have, and to prevent it.
Thank you for your response. And last question, Commissioner, I know you spoke about technology, perhaps having more surveillance cameras on all over the island, but you mentioned also technology that connects you to the federal partners. What do you mean by that? What technology do you need to connect to our federal partners?
So, as you know, there's different federal law enforcement agencies that we're currently partnered with. I've got officers with most of the three-letter federal agencies that we have on island. When we're talking about connecting, is our crime data that will be connected to the FBI's national crime data. So that we right, it's a constant feed, and that we can be tracking criminals from stateside. Who knows that we can tell ourselves that there's none in the islands that escapes Wyoming and comes to the Commonwealth. We will never know, right? Unless we're connected with our federal law enforcement partners.
Thank you for your response, Commissioner. And Mr. Chairman, I yield for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Sablan. Rep. As Vice Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning, Commissioner, to your team. I've noticed that there's an uptick or an upscale in your enforcement efforts. Is that just as a result of Law Enforcement Week or the speed checks and whatnot?
No, so the uptick in the enforcement, when you're talking about traffic enforcement, it's not just for Law Enforcement Week. We're trying to do that more random, right? When people are least expecting it, because that is the best, right? So speed is almost like integrity, right? When nobody's looking, right? It's how you act and behave. That's your integrity. So that is a driver's integrity, right? When you think nobody's looking, and then an officer calls you, right, flags you off the road. And so we're conducting that random across the island. For some that maybe some are on Monsignor Martinez, and so it's the surprise areas. But more importantly, we're targeting areas where crashes are more likely to occur, because most of the crashes are speed is a factor. And to answer you, we increase following the fatality that we had in Dandan, just past the NMC traffic light, right? Because we're attributing, there's a speed factor there. So the laser enforcement is really to remind people that yes, the speed still kills these days.
Thank you, and thank you for that response. And the reason why I ask is, and we do appreciate that you are stepping up enforcement efforts. We do notice that a lot of the drivers out there are kind of taking extra precaution, especially the ones that are passing by and flashing their lights. But the reason why I ask is, so these fines and these fees, are they kept into a revolving account with DPS? And are they meant to help fund personnel costs?
No, sir. And that is, you reached my conclusion statement, which was to ask the committee to relook at the citations that DPS issues. That how much really is going to DPS? That it's been by law, this very House passed that about a decade ago or more, that were the judiciary, because of the building and the mortgage that they have, those citations were dedicated to pay for the mortgage. And I think that mortgage may have matured where it's been, right? It's down to a minimal amount. So to answer you, Congressman, I wish that at least 50% of citations we issue or more return back to to DPS so that we can capitalize on training officers, buying the latest technology, and also, vehicles that'll be more technologically and or actually fuel efficient. So it's a very good question, and one of the things to consider also with citations is we're at a minimum. Whether you run 5 miles an hour over or 10, it's still a flat rate of $25. That's right, unrealistic, and for the effort, because there may be a chase for somebody that goes higher, right? That involves. So we're not, unfortunately, we have not reflected the effort and the personnel hours that goes into writing a citation. Because again, one of the factors is that it does not come back so that I can hire more, right? We're stuck with what we have. So I would appreciate the committee and you, Vice Speaker, if you look into where those funds are going.
Thank you for that. We'll suggest that to our chairman to take a look at that. So just a few more questions, if that's okay. Thank you. Commissioner, is the purpose of having a police cycle or academy to help reduce overtime?
It is.
And how many police officers are produced from every cycle, and do you anticipate to have another cycle upcoming?
The last cycle was one of the largest that the department had in many years. It was a big class. Typically, a cycle will be about 25 because it's manageable. But I believe 26 cycle, which was the last cycle about 2 years ago, had over 40, well, 46, 36? Yeah, 36 officers. And so it is designed to, again, we increase the number of personnel so that we can minimize overtime, right, as an organization. Was your second question, am I looking forward to another
Yes.
academy? Yes, as a matter of fact, we're in talks with the Northern Islands College because I will need officers, and we're looking at this summer, as early as this summer, but then the financial part, again, is a factor, so that we can run, but it's not just for DPS though. We have to start breaking down these obstacles that are, right? We're running a basic law enforcement academy. What you teach a police officer versus what a conservation officer, criminal law is criminal law, right? What's different is a conservation officer will not need traffic law enforcement, right?
Yeah.
So we can have in my previous capacity, we established the foundational law enforcement academy curriculum, and then we'll send the individual officers to their agencies, right? Go learn to be a customs officer, go learn to be a conservation officer, or a corrections officer, or a police officer. So we're hoping to have one. We have several vacancies, and we're actually looking at those vacancies. These are police officer vacancies, not police cadet, by the way, so that we can turn that into as part of this upcoming academy. I'm in talks with other law enforcement agencies that we have, and the interest is there, so that we can have a combined law enforcement academy, which was ran last time was in the late 90s, right? So that we can have it as a group so we can cost share. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My last few questions is, do you have any police officers right now under any ARPA accounts?
We had not, no, because as of last week, we had to, we've been working the past few months to transition the 20% ARPA back to local, so we 100% local.
Okay. And how many officers were migrated into that?
That's the majority, almost the entire police force, from the police director down.
Are those reflected in the budget proposal submitted by the governor? Or?
I'm not sure, but
Yeah.
I think none of these are, because we have to transition. What you have before you is those are non-ARPA, right? Non-ARPA.
They're not ARPA. Okay. All right. That's all I have for now, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Vice Speaker. And before I recognize Rep. Flores, because I know she's jotting down the citation law right now, and she's working. Are you working on it right now? Okay. Rep. Angelo. Oh,
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, Commissioner and team.
Morning.
Just a very few questions, but I'm sorry to shift your brain back, but moving back to the technology, would it be possible to apply and obtain a federal grant for these camera systems that you were talking about earlier?
Yes, as you know, with most of the grants, yes, so it is possible, and we're looking into that, right? But for the immediate, right, and I mean, if I'm talking about the camera, I wish that had happened 5 or more years ago, so that we can realize it today, right? So we got to deal with that now. So yes, applying for grants, that's something we're looking at, which of the which grants that the federal may have for us. The one of the factors, like in most grants, is our location, right? We can't compare the Commonwealth and the crime, to any other, most jurisdiction, if you will, right? So that's always a challenge, right? It's justifying that, but it's not stopping us from doing it. So we are really looking into those, and as you know, it's just a matter of time whether will be approved. So we are.
All right, thank you for that. And then maybe you can perhaps look more into depth and see maybe we can possibly purchase, those easy to install wireless cameras and, maybe perhaps distribute it to residential houses. I think that'll be, very sufficient and really reduce the crime rates. Because as Representative Sablan mentioned, we've noticed an increase in crimes in just the village of Cagman alone. So I strongly believe that it'll be a strong tactic or strategy to use, and maybe, like I said, if you can look into that, and I don't know, for me, I think that'll be awesome. One more thing is, how many dispatch do you currently have right now?
2, 4, 8, 2. Yeah, two DPS, and then the rest are EMDs under DFIMS.
Also, two from DPS.
Yes,
And then if we, like, let's say, for instance, I was to call 911, either DPS or DFIMS would answer, or?
that's correct.
I see. And the reason why I asked is because I think it was like a couple weeks ago, I actually called 911 and nobody answered. It just kept ringing, nobody answered, and I didn't even get a return call. So you might want to look into that issue. So
Yeah, that's interesting. Yes, sir.
thank you, Chairman. I yield for now.
thank you, Rep. Angelo. Rep. Marissa.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, for coming, and I share your sentiment when we talk about, vision and where we should be, but we haven't really had as much vision as we wanted, so therefore we didn't change with the times, which now places us in this predicament where we're looking for more money because everything got more expensive while we weren't properly applying the appropriate charges, increases in traffic violations, for one. But thank you for coming and thank you for your team. So it cost about 67,000 to 80,000 for these infrared kind of traffic stops, identifiers on the red light. How many traffic intersections do you have here on Saipan?
Traffic intersection with traffic lights.
With traffic lights?
I gotta say we're at about 30.
30?
Yeah, if you start from the entire island.
Okay.
That's just a rough number. Well, we can get you the exact
Okay.
number.
That way we can figure out, writing these grants. And then I notice you have a federal specialist in your department. I believe she's like a liaison. Federal program coordinator.
Is that
Under the administrative division, DPS, Federal Program Coordinator 1.
so? That's if it's a specific individual, she could be our FEMA,
FEMA, okay.
right? It's funded.
So FEMA funded 100% because it says 90%.
Oh, it's local. I'm sorry. No, she works for all the FEMA reimbursements that we've been claims that we have.
Okay. Do you plan to utilize her in a manner in which she can be looking for these grants?
Yeah, that's a possibility. Yes, yes, ma'am.
Can you put that on your back burner? I mean, that would be good. Obviously, this individual is very trained in finding federal grants. She's got some history and some experience in federal grant writing. So to utilize her in a manner in which you just don't specifically keep her in a silo, but, help you assist in certain objectives and activities like this traffic light, infrared, whatever you
Right.
want to call it, right? Because it's $67,000 to $80,000, and this budget year, that's almost hard. I mean, that's like asking for a miracle at this point,
That'll
right?
be, yeah, it'll be about half of our
Right.
budget.
So kind of just, think about ways where you can utilize your staff in a manner that can be used for other places.
Right.
Do you have in your vision or in your objective succession planning?
And that is specifically for me.
Well, let's talk about your internal, let's say for your investigative unit, right? You have X amount of traffic officers, and let's say in a given, they can be a traffic officer for 10 years. Do you have internal succession planning ideas that could see these people kind of, these are your human resource. You got to capitalize on them as much.
Right.
So do you have that for your mission?
We have it, and that is how we, for instance, specifically brought up traffic, because we invest so much training in these traffic officers that they become specialized, right? So, for instance, we're sending one later this year to Florida. It's a federal grant because most of the traffic are federally funded, and for additional advanced training, so that part of the succession is these, right, as these officers get, right, if I may, get older in terms of that, there's younger ones that are actually are following them and mirroring that, so that they're getting coached and mentored the way a traffic officer / investigator may or should be.
Right.
So yes, that is one of the challenges that we've had, especially investigations. It's about succession planning is not having those tenured investigators.
Right.
Those experienced detectives that have been in there, right? Because the transfers, the wanton, right, willy-nilly left to right transfers did not help the department. So now we have to reestablish that, right? You see, somebody's been trained by the FBI for investigation and homicide, now is doing motor vehicle, right, for instance. So it's actually just that, and I like where you're heading to, and that's something that we're actually developing is that the human capital,
Right.
right, is the investment in human capital, which includes training, right, retention, and all of that. So yes, and I think that's where you headed,
I
ma'am.
am. So I noticed that in your budget you have X amount of assistant chiefs, X amount of captains, X amount of police lieutenants, and then you have police officer ones, and there's a vast amount of those. Just for the viewing, or I'm sorry, for the record, is the tier 1 higher than a tier 3, or is a tier 3 higher than a tier 1?
3,
So 3 is the highest, okay.
so
So
PO1, 2,
is your
3.
lowest,
Yes,
right?
PO1 is the
Okay.
lowest, yes.
So I'm looking at your budget and I noticed that, back in these days, I see them, they're all very familiar to me. I'm sure that back in the 1980s and 1990s, we didn't have succession planning, nor was train the trainer even available at that time. So these are the individuals that kind of had X amount of years of experience and kind of just evolved into these hierarchy positions, right? Is there a possibility where you can take these top-heavy management officers, maybe have them take some courses on train the trainer, right? And because their salaries pretty much can, provide enough reason for them maybe to kind of, train the younger people below them. And then maybe come up with an MOU that they have to finish it, and if they don't, then, they would have to pay that back somehow. So that's another area that we can look into, because it's very top-heavy on the top, but when you're going downward, there's really not much opportunity for them. And human capital investment is very important moving forward.
I agree, ma'am.
And then if you can actually do a cost analysis on that,
Okay.
that would be great.
Yeah, thank you.
You also mentioned about the 20 unsolved cold cases that stem from 1970. What types of expertise will you need? Because you're talking about 40 to 50 CIB. That's very specific in profession. What are your ideas besides, obviously procuring an additional 40 to 50, but using your top heavy to fill this, right? At least half, and then work on those. And I guess when you came in and you had this top heavy, right? Can you give me at least an idea of what an assistant chief police officer does?
So an assistant chief of police, for instance, in patrol, he's in charge, right? He's the manager for anything patrol.
Okay.
And I have an assistant chief for highway patrol, and he's the manager in charge for all motor carrier and traffic enforcement in the CNMI. So I have an assistant chief acting now in the capacity of a motor vehicle director, because I can, right? And I can afford it.
Right.
So it's really, it's the level of task and the nature of the operation that where we assign assistant chiefs of police, so that they will typically have a captain or lieutenants under this assistant chief of police. And so part of that human capital, and we keep talking about, really is vital, because what we're reestablishing now is having, right, we have people that were trained, they've gone for training, for instance, in advanced investigation, but they're not doing those anymore, right? For the past 5-10 years, they're doing something else, right? And these are skills, right?
Lost.
And they lose it, right? You got to be on it to really keep going, especially with homicide, right? We need specific type of people that can deal with that. One of it is the, right, mentally ready to deal with these kinds of cases because you got to follow through.
Okay.
We just don't have, right? When we're talking about the depth of an officer's experience, that's where we lack because we just don't invest in keeping them at that and improving them and keep training them on it,
Right.
right? So it's so it is something that we are seriously looking into so that we can do it now.
And I think a lot of it in terms of budgeting, right? It has to deal with, the sources, the resources that you need
Yes.
to invest in human capital, to invest in the equipment, to invest in the training. So in order to understand what types of needs, what your needs are, we need to understand too where your investment is going, right?
Right.
And my hope is that it goes to human capital
Yes.
because we need that. So one last question, Chair. The Department of Justice and CJPA is the clearinghouse for all grants that have to deal with criminal or crime grants. Have you met with the department from CJPA to really utilize and see how many grants that the CNMI government receives under Department of Justice? And if so, how many of those can be used to assist you in your endeavor in regard to unsolved cases, in regard to equipment, in regard to human capital, in regard to investigations, et cetera?
I mean, I've met with Mr. Tenorio, and as a matter of fact, we just had a council recently because, right, because we are a sub grantee, so we gotta apply for those grants. And for most of our investigative area, those are from grants, and we got some. For instance, Family Violence and
Right.
Task Force, Sexual Offender Registry. That's pretty much most of it, right?
So I think moving forward, Commissioner, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I've already been tasked
Okay.
that I need to wrap my line of questioning up, but I'm gonna ask one more before I yield. In regard to the system that you spoke about that should help you in areas of identifying criminals that arrive in the CNMI, have you met with the Department of Homeland Security and maybe look at collaborating with the Federal Bureau of Investigations here and see how you guys can, figure out a way to procure that device? Because, I mean, for the record, they've been quite inactive. So I think for you, as being a former military and commissioner, I think you know that when you have these discussions, you're pretty stern. And please talk about the need for collaborating the agencies together specific to that department, right? Because they're the ones that actually send some people over in a one-way ticket depending on where they want to be, right? And we have to receive them. We pay the tax on them. We pay they avail of all of the services that our taxpayers pay for. So, that's my last request. But please, thank you again for coming, and I yield for now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Rep. Flores. Before I recognize Rep. Camacho, is there anyone that hasn't gone yet that would? Before I recognize Rep. Camacho, let me recognize the one that hasn't gone yet, Rep. Manglonia.
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, Commissioner and team.
Morning.
Thank you for coming up here. Just to bring it back to the substations, because I did meet with the schools and the community center, and I know one of the bigger issues in the Cagman area is kids after school around the community center. A lot of them vape, a lot of them get into fights, do things that they're not supposed to, and I guess speaking with the community center, they said, when the substation was there, that was kind of a deterrence for that kind of activity. So I know that you guys are stretched thin, but maybe if I could request or see if it's possible to at least get some patrol presence in the area so that way it can deter some of that activity. And I'm hoping that we do get the substations set up more permanently in the future. But I know there's a lot going on. There's a lot on your plate, but that was one of the major issues that was brought up when I did meet with the schools. So, if possible, maybe put that into your plans. And then, secondly, I know last time we met, we did mention that there was no 911 dispatch recording system that's currently set up. I'm wondering maybe is there any federal funding that could help assist with that system? I think Guam just recently opened up a new dispatch center, so I'm thinking they probably got the help of the feds as well. So maybe that's something that we can look into too, and that could help with some of these 911 issues. But thank you. Those are my only two concerns.
Acknowledged, sir.
Thank you, Rep. Manglonia. Rep. Camacho.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, I was looking at the list here, and I see the public auditor is 1%. So I'm gonna assume the 1% has been factored into the budget request, correct?
Right. Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. And the reason I brought that up is I introduced there was issues with that 1% from all the other autonomous agencies. So I introduced a bill to kind of exempt the 1% from all the agencies that are supposed to give that to OPA. But that hasn't gone through the system yet.
Okay.
So I was just wondering, how do you plan to remit this 1% to OPA, and how soon are you gonna do that? When you get the budget?
Basically,
Yeah,
right. So you're saying how soon we're gonna remit the budget?
right, to OPA.
The 1%?
Yeah,
That'll be, right? As soon as the budget is passed?
that's a good answer, yeah, because it hasn't been like that in a long time.
Oh, okay.
That's why, that's a concern for me.
No. I'm sorry, I was talking on behalf of the OMB.
So, yeah, but as soon as the budget is passed, they'll get their 1%. Yeah, we're working, the House is working on a bill to remedy that issue with the OPA and the 1%. Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you. But as far as for the general fund, it's omitted every quarter, I believe, from the Department of Finance. As far as the autonomous agencies, that's beyond our control when the funds are transferred. DPS is part of our general fund. Thank you.
So one more thing, Chair. You know, morale is always a big factor in any agencies. How is the morale now compared to a few months back?
You know, as I walk, meet all the officers, I believe there's a increase in morale. One is again the time, and I keep saying that because it's the time that our officers have with their families, right? And it's not just work 7 days a week. So returning that back to the officer, definitely, time is a factor because we'll never get that back again. So as I meet with officers, there's that sense that again, a sense of belonging, ownership of the department, and that's how it must be. That because this is not Clement Bermuda's department, this is our department, and the buy-in from every individual officer is important. So I would say there's a increase in the right direction, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, lack of camaraderie will always kill the morale. So, as police officers, that's key to how you're gonna be efficient in what you. As military personnel, we understand that, and morale is always the hardest to maintain in an agency. Yeah. Thank you. Are you?
Thank you, Rep. Camacho. Before I recognize Rep. JP and Rep. Olgo, just a follow-up with regards to Rep. Camacho and the morale. Last fiscal year, I mean, we're just getting out of the COVID. Obviously, the 30 to 40 hour per pay period would pretty much stress out a police officer with regards to, not being home and so forth. So my question is now, with regards to the counselor, is there a plan to hire a counselor so that we can address stress and any issues with regards to the mental, health of the police officers?
And as I mentioned, Mr. Chair, on my confirmation hearing, I have no plans to fill that vacancy because it's a supervisor's, one is the first responsibility. They know how their police officers, they should know them personally. And that's the connectedness that's required there. And then if there's, right, the expert and clinical help that they need, and I've sent some already to CGC, because the way I see things is that, if they need fire, you need fire, right? A firefighter. Okay, you don't come to DPS, you go to DFIMS. If I need a counselor, I go to CGC because that's where the expertise is. So again, we have to start looking at and actually leveraging and actually using the services where under the specific agencies, because if not, we're gonna end up with multiple CGCs in the Commonwealth, and then we can't afford that. So we need to centralize that, right? And so, no, sir, I do not have any plans on filling that vacancy.
Thank you, Commissioner. Rep. Sablan. Okay. Rep. Ogle.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, DPS Commissioner and your staff. So I'm actually working on legislation for heavy equipment. And you probably heard I was trying to reach out to you a week or two ago, trying to, set up a meeting to discuss some of my questions. And I also reached out, or I stopped by DMV, and I think their acting is Ogumaro, is that correct? I left my car, I never got a return call. And then I stopped by at the Motorcraft in the Capitol Hill. Is that where it's the division's at, right, for heavy equipment inspection? I left the cart, nobody called me again. It's been a week. But my question is, there's a lot of heavy equipments, on the road. And it's very concerning that I notice a lot of the tags are expired. And I've actually reached out to those companies that have, are driving those heavy equipments out there. And they have, showed me a few of them. One particular company expired, their registration is expired. And that was in February of this year. Up to now, it's still, expired. So my concern is, do you have enough FTEs in that division to, to inspect those vehicles out there, or are our police officers, like patrol officers looking out, for those, not just vehicles, but heavy equipment's expirations? For me, it's very concerning because heavy equipment, it's much more dangerous, when it comes to accidents. And, just last week I found out that there's one heavy equipment that got into an accident. Fortunately, I don't think that driver is, certified. So where is DPS as far as heavy equipment inspections and certificate, ensuring that heavy equipment drivers are certified to be on the road?
Congresswoman, I share your concern, and yes, because this is a monstrosity that's rolling down the highways, right? 10 tons or more of steel, actually, and it's a real concern. So the motor carrier program that we have, those are the experts that we have to deal with heavy equipment and anything commercial. And I apologize that, the unsatisfactory response that you had. But we'll take care of this and ensure that, one, because there's a periodic check. We just did Tinian, I believe, last week. We sent a strike force down there because there's a concern. Actually, they're grounded because the construction company could not move. That's how strict we are with this. For those companies that are actually, thinking they're getting away with it, from the right, the fine is heavier than to pay for the registration for them, and so that is something we'll keep you updated on how we deal with the heavy equipment here on Saipan.
Okay, so I was looking at penalty for late registration. Is actually only $30, compared to the regular vehicles and whatnot. And I think, we should, I'm looking at possibly increasing that penalty for heavy equipment. Because, $30 is very minimal, very nominal for them to pay for. They can not register for the entire year, if anything.
That's half of a 10 CY
Yeah.
delivery of right, a Coral. I mean, if you kind of look at it, right, should I do this or not? I shouldn't, But the fine is actually heftier than the late registration penalty. So when they're caught, that's where it's heavier.
Well, the concern there is, the safety of the heavy equipment itself.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rep. Olga. Do you yield? You're yielding? Okay, Rep. Sablan and then Rep. Marisa.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner, just a general question. I know that there is a variance of an increase of 1.1 on the governor's proposal for FY 2024 versus the FY 2023 revised budget. Can you enlighten the August body on where are this increase of funding going to, and what divisions or unit, and why?
Sir, I got to look at what the governor's submission versus our submission.
So the governor's submission is 7.069562, and your department request is at 9.8. So there is a decreased variance versus your department budget request versus the governor's FY 2024 proposal. But there is an increase of 1.1 versus what you have right now, the revised 2023 budget. So the question is the variance of increase 1.1 million. Where are you allocating those funds, with what divisions within your department, and why?
Let me. I don't he has the full amount. Maybe OMB can
Okay,
respond.
okay.
Yeah, Chair, maybe I'll go to my follow-up questions, and maybe we can have the commissioner get his numbers and answer perhaps later. Commissioner, so that we don't delay the process here, Commissioner. So just a follow-up question to the issue about the speeding fee and running a stoplight. You mentioned that the fees are at $25, and it seems like violators are just paying these fees and avoiding going to a court hearing, and it seems like it's just a slap on the wrist. Are you recommending that we increase these fees and perhaps move towards deterring any further violators with regards to speeding and running a red light?
I am, sir. This is going to be a scheduled fee just like any other U.S. jurisdiction, right? At 30 miles, over 30 miles should not be the same as 5 miles, right? So there's got to be a schedule. There's got to be a base. You start at 25, for instance, and every mile thereafter is about $5, so that it deters drivers from speeding.
So do you have any amount that you're recommending? Because, we like, some of us members of the House would like to go back to this statute and kind of look at uh, the fees and perhaps try to take a look on increasing these fees if the intent was to deter and violators from continue because it seems like a $25 fee. I'm sure you have data that there are probably more than 20 violators that have been paying this over the years, and they just continuously violate the statute. So, if there is any amount that you are perhaps have researched other states with their schedule fees, please share if there is. Right.
I will, sir. I just got to say that we are very generous in terms of our the penalties. And going back to the question you had earlier, Mr. Chair just shared with me.
I think, Commissioner, the main difference with regards to the public safety is obviously the 600,000 fuel and lubricant, 100,000 for the repair and maintenance, and 162,000 for operation supplies. And there's other lists that you submitted to the administration. Is there a reason why the administration chose not to cover? Is this like the grant, the fuel? Is it covered by grants with regards to refilling the department or the repair and maintenance? Are these all covered by the grants? Miss Jasmine.
I would like to answer on behalf of the administration. The difference in personnel would be because the department submitted at 100% for all personnel staffing. We budgeted and submitted to the legislature at a 90% for personnel. So the difference of, I believe, 700,000 is the difference between the 100% and the 90%. As far as operations, we've identified in front of you the special funds and the federal funds for the department, hoping that they could use and utilize these funds for their operations. We did not budget for operations across the general fund for all departments and agencies. The budget is just based on personnel. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jess. Commissioner, you have something to add? Or?
I just want to highlight again, communication, fuel, and utilities is, something that we got to face, because that will cripple us. We may have all 100% personnel, but in addition to that will be the communication, fuel, and utilities expenses that we will have.
Rep. Sabang, follow
Chair, just a follow-up to Mrs. Camacho from OMB. So the vacant positions with their amounts, they're included in the fiscal year 2024 proposal from the governor.
Correct.
And now my question to the commissioner, since he had mentioned earlier that he has no intention in filling these vacancies. So where, Commissioner, do you intend to use all these fees on their vacancies, and why?
So the counselor specifically was the question of that I do not have the intention of filling. So again, it's part of building this next academy. I will have to restructure those positions for police. And there's assistant chiefs. We don't need any more chiefs. Right, so that is something at that salary I can hire 2 police officers. So we need more officers out there than more doers rather than tellers, right?
Thank you, Commissioner, for that clarity. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Rep Sablana. Rep Flores, you have 3 minutes.
You know, they always try to contain my line of questionings for some reason, but thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. So first question, we'll go to Jasmine, Ms. Camacho, and then I'll get to you real quick, Commissioner. So, Ms. Camacho, on the Department of Public Safety, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 15 FTEs or FT, and its allocation percentage is 50%. Where's the other 50% coming from?
Thank you, Rep Flores. It could be from their federal funds covering the 50% or their revolving fund.
For Police Officer 1?
I believe those are the federal. And those are actually vacant.
Yeah.
Yeah. It should be from their federal funds.
I think it's 50%. It doesn't have a page. Volume 1, under Public DPS, the code is 111-50500. So I don't know. So that's all your codes. I guess it's front and back page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So if I could remember, prior year, CJP covered 50% of these police officer 1 positions, and they are now vacant. I was just told that CJP won't cover that anymore. So it's because it's vacant, it would be lapse funds. So the agency can use it for operational use.
Does the agency know what those lap funds number are?
We would need to do projections, but if it's not filled, the full amount, 22,000, would be the lapse funds for the
For
fiscal
each
year.
of them, right?
Yes,
Okay, so
correct.
can you coordinate with the commissioner? That way he knows how to utilize those funds that are available to him, just based on this meeting. Thank you, Ms. Camacho. So Commissioner, last question, Chair. And I'm going to follow up with Congressman Manglonia. We did meet, yes, that was correct. And we were talking about how the 911 recorder should be available to you in terms of crime solving, and especially in court when they're trying to tackle cases, right? Just so that we, for everyone to know that, IT&E has got a very nice 25-year lease on the communications, fiber optic lines, and so forth. So in order to increase our public and private partnership, you might want to get a hold of their president and see how they can return the favor somehow, and possibly procuring that for you, because it is an island-wide distribution commitment, and they're in the areas of telecommunications. I'm pretty sure if we dig in deep enough and find out how much they are actually profiting from our people, I think that would be more than sufficient enough money to cover that. Not only are we paying for 5G, but only getting 3G. I think that the monopoly needs to be somehow addressed, but I do believe that as a public and private partnership, you might want to reach out to them and see how they can at least help you in regard to that nature.
Thank you, Congressman, for that information. And
Thank you,
we'll-
I yield.
Thank you. I guess the Chair of Natural Resources put a note on that. Rep Camacho.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, I met with the Secretary of Finance about a week and a half ago with the Speaker of the House, and she had informed us that I believe it was like last year and a half, DPS was 180 some amount of cell phones that were being utilized by the departments, which was been cut back or scaled back to about 30 some. cell phones. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. We sat with her, and our feedback is just that 30.
Okay. With that significant amount of reduction in cell phone, actually, can you?
The cost?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, yes. It will be cost. It will be saving. The 30 will be local, and then we're leverage again using our federal funds. You know, some of the grants actually will cover for cell phone, so we're shifting that to those grants.
To the federal account.
Yes.
Okay. May I ask what were those? What was the use for that many cell phones, and were that issued out to police officers or admin staff?
So most of that was police. So if you look at do the numbers, almost every officer was issued a cell phone.
Okay, so now that you've scaled back, who right now holds those phones?
They're starting to return it back in. We have to collect them so that we can deal with IT&E, so that we can return those devices as part of us canceling those accounts.
So the 30 remaining or whatever the number is now, who holds those phones?
So those will be the supervisors, from me to the shift supervisors, so that those are the people we need to stay in contact with most of the time. And as you know, I think across the cinema, probably even everybody's got a cell phone down to a 2-year-old these days. So I mean, yeah, the government just can't subsidize phones anymore. We can't afford it. So that is why we're canceling those accounts, so we can have better control of it.
Okay, my last question, Mr. Chairman. Also, I know in the effort to cut back on costs, have you guys returned any of your leased vehicles?
We don't have any leased vehicles, sir, for the department.
Okay, so
So those were purchased. What we be facing soon will be those that were unpaid. Right? So they purchased vehicles but never fully paid. So those are the things we're looking at, doing an analysis on which of those vehicles we can afford to return back, because we just can't afford it, right? I mean, I can't buy all my kids a Hummer and only pay 10% down payment, and then I can't pay the rest, the 90%. So I gotta that's what we're relooking, and what will be the impact on the department if we return those vehicles that were not fully paid.
thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You.
Thank you, Rep Camacho. Before I recognize Vicente Camacho, Rep Flores for the first round.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, welcome. And again, congratulations on your appointment. Okay, I've been hearing regarding the 911 calls. As retired officers, it's always been a problem with 911, and I think that this is maybe the time, based on Representative Flores, to work with IT&E, and maybe we should create a section strictly dedicated for 911. Since you mentioned earlier, you only have 2 personnel doing the 911, and it's a 24-hour shift. Everything needs to be minded, and the officers should be there at least go 8-hour shift. So I think that's one that we look into it and make it happen. And also regarding the citations, so issuing citations has always been a challenge for the officers, and together with the Superior Court who house the payment going back and forth. I think it's time for us to, like yourself, now, to look into it. And I just want to, I don't know if you're aware of the previous this commissioner. There was a program, or I don't know, maybe they were working on TRCC. Are you aware of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, going back, that was 2 years ago when Commissioner Guerrero and Macoraz was in charge of traffic. I was trying basically to work on a bill to raise the traffic citation fines. And I approached this committee, and they said they're working on the fines, but I don't know what happened to this committee. And from up to this day, there's no, you're mentioning about fines are very low, but I think we should go back and look into this committee, how far has they gone with their report, because it is 3 years already. And also, it's been a practice that we always invest in equipments. And for some reason, we purchased the equipment, we purchased all the data, and then we never implemented it. So 3 or 4 years ago, there's a system, e-ticket, was to be implemented, but it never materialized. And we keep talking about technology, we keep spending money, but we need to actually work on the e-ticket so we can work hand in hand with the officers, because it's a burden officer giving a citation, and the officer will say it's nothing in return for them.
Right.
But if we work on a system that it's a work and work both situation, everybody be happy, everybody get their share, and you get your share. We continue with the technology, we continue with the enforcement, we can get more equipment, and it's generating revenue for both sides.
Right.
So I think that for me, would it be possible if we really look into this system so we can try to move on with the legislation so we can bring up the fines. If we do raise up the fines, the traffic violation will be decreasing, because if I have somebody to pay a $500 for speeding, you say I'm not going to speed anymore. I'm going to watch out every day where I'm going.
Yeah.
Okay. And also, I would like to have your section look into the insurance, the enforcement of insurance. I have a bill. There's a bill that I'm proposing regarding the statute regarding the insurance of There's a 7 days grace period for them if they're not having insurance, for them to get an insured. And trying to remove that is for them to require that the insurance card has to be present at the vehicle glove compartment together with the car registration. That will ease it up for people. Will basically have them to make sure that their insurance are every year renew. And the enforcement side, when they created the Public 1155, there's a section there that the police officers will do a sobriety a checkpoint, insurance checkpoint. But since then, it's been already almost 10 years they haven't done any inspections. So that will alleviate more of the people that are not renewing, and that's generating funds for the department itself together with motor vehicle.
Right.
So would it be possible to take a look at that so we can start doing some enforcement? Because the lack of everything that we're saying with the department is in need of revenue, but we also need to do the enforcement to generate the revenue. So that's part of the DPS we should look into. Thank you.
Acknowledge, sir.
Thank you, Rep. Flores. Rep. Vicente Camacho.
Thank you again. Commissioner, it's just kind of a closing statement on my part, but I know you're not going to make DPS perfect, but thank you for putting in a lot of effort. DPS is very important for the cinema and for the people in general. And, we'll try to help you. You need us to take care of your department. So you need to let us know what we need to do for you. Yeah, regardless of what you already submitted as budget. You're always going to need more money. Okay? Thank you. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Rep. Camacho. Just one question, Commissioner. Does the DPS have a settlement against an active settlement against judgment right now? The cinema, the government.
None I'm aware of right now, sir.
Yeah, because you submitted a
Yeah.
an amount of 100,000 for settlement against government. So I'm assuming that's for when you accidentally hit another, private vehicle during a chase or whatever. So there's none that needs to be paid as of
Not right now, as I'm aware, but again, we're in a high-risk operation, so that, you never know. A takedown may result in a civil lawsuit against the department.
Right. And lastly, on maybe Miss Jasmine, on the submit of the other expenses, what is that? Under the police department, or the commissioner may answer. There was a submittal, but it was not funded on the proposal. But I'm just wondering, what is that 100,000 request for other expenses? That incidentals, or it's on the last page of the general fund under police stipend.
Sir, are you referring to the CI fund, the confidential informant?
No, actually, it's on. I guess it's on the. I mean, unless you guys are looking at different form. There was a request for other expenses under account number 11150 500. Some yeah 69010 account.
Yes, sir, that's the CI
900.
fund,
What was that?
the confidential informant
Oh,
funds.
okay. Oh, just for in case we. Okay, okay.
Yeah, we do operations, and again, with the increase in property crimes, there's always got to be an incentive for people that are calling in.
Okay, so that's what the Crime Stoppers are for, right? I guess. Members, we're hitting the almost 11. We want to be out by 11. So, is there anybody that hasn't gone that would want to ask first round? Otherwise, I'm gonna pretty much close it up. Mario, good. This is it. Yeah.
Are we coming back again?
Unless there is a revised, Commissioner, did the administration request for the department to submit revised budget this year? Or not that you're aware of? Okay. So this is it. Let me recognize Rep. Benevendi for the first time, and then Rep. Marisa.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, again on the morning, and your team that are here. I'm just looking at the basic, the upfront request by the department, the budget request, and at the same time the governor's proposal. I saw that there's a shortfall of a little bit, almost 20, what you call this, $20 million, no? So, with all the discussions that was aforementioned earlier in this chamber, with all the members, how can you find some sort of a meeting ground with regards to trying to either downsize or establish a staggered approach within the department that might, able to kind of come to almost to a meeting, to a point where you will be in the comfortable bracket of your proposal plus the governor's, your request plus the governor's proposal. And I know the challenges that you are faced with all the pre-existing issues and concerns that you have for the department. In the same token, we're challenged with also fiscal challenge ahead of us. So we have to work together as much as possible. We're not trying to scrutinize you down to the penny, but if anything can work, then it's always welcome within these committees. That's all I'm going to say this morning. I'll wait for whatever that needs to be done. But anyway, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to just share some concerns.
Thank you, Rep. Benaventi. Rep. Marisa.
Sorry, my last question. So, and I think this might go to Ms. Camacho. So you allocated, the department allocated 480,000 in utilities. So my question would be for Ms. Camacho, because DPS is under the governor's office, will this $480,000 be remitted to DPS, or will the OMB or finance have the responsibility of remitting this payment? And if so, will this payment be made in one lump sum to cover arrears, or will this payment be for fiscal year 2024?
I am not sure about the plans for the administration, but it will be the Department of Finance if the funds are there. We did not allocate funding for any operational expenses for all departments. I believe for payments, it would come from their federal grants or their special funds, or if there's any anticipated funding availability to pay these bills.
So it will be covered under administrative costs
No,
by the grant?
no.
No. So how much money is allotted to them through OMB, what you have identified for utilities, specifically for FY 2024? Through grant?
None on the general fund side. As far as grants, it depends on the grant.
Okay, so how are you, they're allocating 480,000 for utilities.
That's their department request.
Okay, but the governor's proposal zeroed.
Yes, we did not request for any funding.
So who's supposed to pay the 400 and, I mean, how are they supposed to pay the utility bills?
I can't answer that right now, but that's how it is currently also. With the revised budget, the 23-04, there's no funding for utilities as well.
Okay,
Payments are being made upon funding, availability of funding.
Okay, so if they receive their utility bill and they transmit it up to, okay, what is the process? They receive their utility bill, then where does it go? Because they don't have a fiscal management, you're the fiscal management team for them. So they receive their bill, and what is that process for payment?
I believe the department can answer that question.
So when we receive the bill, we process for payment. If there's money, they'll approve it. If not, it's still there. I mean, there's nothing much we can do, but for the past, let's say 5 years, we have been paying our monthly bills. I think that if the department does not have money, SOF, the Secretary of Finance, will find the money to pay for it.
Okay.
It's always been like that.
Okay.
The utilities.
So last year, was it the same amount, 480,000?
I think it was more.
It was more.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just remove this 400 now and 80,000 because it doesn't exist, right? You're allocating money that you might not even get. Actually, you don't get, period. So this will reduce your actual budget, again, request, right? So I guess my question is, why are you allocating for 480,000 when you don't even get the money to begin with?
When they requested for us to submit a budget, we submit how much we're going to need for utilities. I don't know where that money is going to come from, but we're saying we need 480,000 for utilities.
So when you get the 400, assuming the 480 is there, you get your bill, okay? Finance is supposed to pay for that, but there's nothing in the general fund. It keeps increasing, and it keeps increasing, and the debt goes to the taxpayer. So again, would it be safe then, Commissioner, to say just take out the 480,000 and just don't even allocate anything since it comes out from the governor's expense anyway?
Right. I mean, that's the way the current method is.
Okay, so would it be safe to say to remove the 480,000 and let the governor's office handle the utilities since it handles everything else as far as executive, whatever falls under his branch, he's involved, he has to pay for the utilities the way it's set up, correct?
We prefer that we actually get the budget so that we're responsible to deal with our bills. If the government decides to centralize it, that's I think an executive prerogative to centralize all the bills.
Does that work for you?
Does it work for me? No, because we get the calls, not the central government, right?
Okay, so $480,000. You probably don't even get it anyway. He pays for it, supposedly. You accrue this because it's never been paid anyway. But for the past 5 years, you've been paying. What is your average cost for last year in utilities? Fiscal year, the whole year, rough number.
It's about 60,000 a month.
60,000 a month. So that's just barely.
That includes prepaid meters and direct billing.
Direct billing, okay. So, Commissioner, $480,000 is budgeted for you in utilities. We don't know if that is going to be paid on time, or we don't even know if it's going to be paid, period, right? Just given the history in the past month with all of these arrears that have just ballooned for the past 30 years. But thank you, Ms. Enos, for paying the bill, utility bill, for the last 5 years, saving the taxpayer some remedies, right? So, Ms. Camacho, in the event that they allocate 480,000, if you don't have the money to pay for the utilities, but we have approved the budget for 480,000 in utilities from the general fund, how would it be paid?
Right now, it's not part of the department, it's not part of the governor's proposal. What is proposed is only personnel. There's no operation proposed. The 480,000 was a department's request that we did not give on the governor's proposal. Thank you.
Our hope is that they don't get disconnected, right? Thank you, I yield.
Thank you, Rep. Flores. Any member? With that, closing remarks, Commissioner?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, committee members. As my first hearing, this is a rather great experience, and appreciate the active and actually the engaging manner in which you conduct this hearing, because like Congressman Camacho mentioned, it is our department, and they'll figure out which Camacho, but it is our department, and we can only improve the department as a community, and that is how we should be approaching the services. But more importantly, our men and women in the department continue to serve the department, some more than 20 years, most more than 20 years. And that's telling that they really are vested in this department, and it's because of the critical services that they provide to our community. And I look forward if there's any further amendments to the budget, and look forward to future engagement with the House. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and all the members.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. With that, thank you. I know this fiscal year is going to be a challenge. We'll try to fund every essential service. I know that's always been the challenges of every legislature. We know utilities is going to always be a problem, so that's something that we need to address. And we understand there's going to be a cycle, hopefully not more than the allotted vacancies that are available here. But I know it's going to be across the agencies with enforcement, so I do understand that. And with that, I'd like to thank everyone for being here. Thank you, Commissioner. And with that, this Ways and Means hearing on DPS will stand adjourned. Thank you.